It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege of interviewing the Waldorf head track and field coach, Coach Janna Langrell. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good. Can you talk about how you knew that you want to get started in coaching in the sport of track and field?
Yeah. So I think as an athlete, a lot of people go to college to get to continue their sport. And I had kind of dabbled in a lot of different majors, switched my major a couple times. And towards the end of my running career, I decided that I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I knew I wasn't ready to give up track. And so I had started coaching at the encouragement of my college coach. And then I figured, okay, let's just go and get my master's of education. I still had eligibility. So I was competing in grad school and coaching at the high school level. It was so much fun. We saw a lot of success. And then when the opportunity came to possibly be an assistant at Hope, where I attended school, I was like, yeah, let's try out this college coaching thing. And it just kind of has been my profession ever since.
What was that experience like being a track athlete at Hope International?
Yeah, it was super memorable. I don't think I would change anything. I actually started the cross country and track program while I was there. So I was the first female to ever get to compete for Hope in cross country. And then that was in 2012, the fall of 2012. And then the spring of 2014 was the first year that track was an official sport at Hope. So it was really awesome kind of getting to lay that foundation. We had our difficulties. Hope International doesn't have a track. So we would go across the street to Cal State Fullerton, or we go to Fullerton College and use their track, which I'm super thankful that we were able to do that. So it came with its own set of challenges, but Hope was just such a great place. And I don't think I would have finished college if I didn't go there.
How was that experience like, as you said, being one of the inaugural teams to put Hope International on the map for track?
It was fun, again, it came kind of with its challenges. I never got the experience of being on like a really big college team. If I remember correctly, the largest our team got up to, men and women, was like 14 or 15. So, and it was just distance. We didn't have any sprints, we didn't have any jumps, no throws because we didn't have facilities. So it was really cool kind of getting to do that. We got to go to some really great meets. I had some really great coaches. Jamie, formerly Canterbury, now Winslow, she competed at APU. So she was my original coach. And then Dan Whittington, who coached at Whittier and now coaches, or Whittier High School and now coaches at Hope. Both of them are still mentors to me, and I still try to keep in touch with both of them. So, I think it was really cool getting to have the privilege to start that. But, I'm excited for how the program's continuing to progress. I think there's been a lot more success since I've left, and that's been great to see.
As an athlete, what was that experience like putting on that uniform for the first time for the school and for yourself?
It was cool. I remember our freshman year, the cross country uniforms were horrible. And it's not our coach's fault. I don't think they got to feel the material. But we just had like these white jerseys that felt like the inside of basketball shorts, and they just collected sweat and they got heavy. But it was really cool because, I was getting to run in college. So like it didn't matter. I still have the uniform, and then we got like these really cool blue uniforms, and we've had awesome uniforms. But it definitely like signified something greater than myself. We were running not just for ourselves, but we were running to represent our school, to glorify God. All of it was just so surreal that I had never even imagined running in college. I grew up insistent that I was going to go to school for soccer, and I played soccer. I had offers for soccer, made the last minute decision to run instead, and it was the best decision I've ever made.
As an athlete, what were some of your biggest accomplishments?
Um, I mean, I think just getting to start the program was a huge accomplishment. I don't think I was slow by any means, but I definitely like never qualified for nationals. I was off by about a second in the 800. So I think some of the bigger accomplishments while I was a student athlete was getting to come back from some of the trials that were happening in my life. My dad had gotten diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And so I was not focusing on grades. I was ineligible a semester. So I actually had to miss my junior year track, which was kind of a bummer. I was just coming off of a really good track season and a pretty solid cross season. And then to be ineligible was really a bummer. And I wasn't going to let that deter me. I switched my major. And then I took 15 units over the summer, which I would never recommend a student do. That was so bad. But I got eligible again and I was able to finish with my degree in 4 years on time after switching my major and failing a whole semester. And so that was kind of a bigger accomplishment to me than anything I accomplished on the track.
What was that transition like going from being an athlete to being an assistant coach on the high school level?
It was fun. I really enjoyed it. I very quickly learned everything you gave your coaches, you were going to get back tenfold. And so the most notable thing was I had my coach, Jamie Winslow, for 7 of my 8 semesters in undergrad. And then Dan Whittington came in and I was a terror. I didn't trust him. I didn't trust his training. I didn't care what his accolades were. I had just had knee surgery. So I was just horrible to him. And I feel horrible now, like thinking back on it. It's so embarrassing. It's so frustrating. And he's like, I get it. But I remember it came to a head and we were at practice one day and I was just mad and I was crying and he let me get it all out. And then he sat down and he really explained why. And so that like was kind of a light bulb moment for me. So then as I was coaching at the high school level, I started at Don Lugo, which was my alma mater, had no issues there. And then I knew because I was running in grad school, I was going to have to stop coaching there. I couldn't dedicate the time that these kids deserved. So I had prayed about it. And then a day or two later, Coach Whittington had texted me and he goes, "Are you looking for a job?" And I hadn't told him that I was leaving Lugo. And I was like, "Why? Why do you ask?" And he's like, "Well, one of my best friends texted me and said they're looking for a distance coach and you were the only person that came to mind." And in that moment, I just didn't feel worthy of it because I was like, I was such a nightmare to you and I'm the first person you can think of. And I was like, I'm interested, but I'm still working with Don Lugo. Like, I want to see this season through. Just tell them to keep me in mind. I can't dedicate any of my mental energy or any of this thought until after I've concluded this season with my kids. And so he put my name in the hat and I got the job at Troy. And that first cross season, or I think I started in track, I had kids fighting me tooth and nail. I was young. We just had little rules. One of them, I just told the kids, I'm like, you guys can't run around campus shirtless. Like, there's my age, like, you guys are on campus. And this kid was so mad about it. He went to our head coach and was like, "You need to fire her. What is she doing?" He was mad. And I like would call Whittington. I'm like, "What's going on? Why are the kids acting like this? Why aren't they trusting me?" And he's like, "You can't change the culture in a season. Like, you can try, but like it takes time. Like, you have to build that trust, remember?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I do." So I think the transition to coaching is always a little rockier than people kind of think. But as long as you come in with the right attitude and you stay the course and you hold true to really who you are and what you want to build, then you're going to see a lot of success.
What was that feeling like coming back home to Hope International and being the assistant track coach for sprints and hurdles?
It was a lot of fun. So I got to work with distance and then also sprints and hurdles. And I got to work with a high jumper, but like we never practiced. So by helping him, I would just kind of like stand at the fence and be like, "Hey, it looks like you need to do this." I had no idea what I was doing with high jump, but he was just a super talented athlete and he won conference for us that year. But it was a lot of fun. We had one distance athlete in particular. I coached her senior year track season at Troy. Then she came to Hope, so she was my teammate. And then I hired her as my assistant at Troy. And then I got to come back and coach her senior year cross country season at Hope. So it was really cool to kind of see the growth that she had in those 4 years. But it just means so much more. Like, I had so much loyalty to that program, to that school. Like, they gave me every possible opportunity, and I truly feel like Hope is such a special place, and there's a really special type of student that belongs there. And if they're open to it and they're willing, like, Hope can change their lives. And so to get to be a part of a program that gave me so much meant everything to me.
What was that transition like for you, going from leaving your alma mater of Hope International to coming to Wolford to become the head coach?
Yeah, so coming to Waldorf was like a huge leap of faith. I kind of just started looking, and when I flew out here for the interview, the head coach, the director at the time, was Joel Poppenfuss, and he was such a character. Like, his energy was just super contagious. Part of that was probably his background as a pastor, but he had also been a coach for a really long time, and like, people were just drawn to him. I remember one of the funniest things, like, I didn't know in the Midwest, it was common to, like, it's more common in the winter, but not in the summer, but people will leave their car running while they fill up their gas. And I was on my interview, and that's the first time that had ever happened. And I remember reaching over while he was outside, and I shut his car off, and I was just like, what is happening? But then I very quickly realized, and like, I do this now, I'll leave my car running during the winter because it gets so cold out here. But yeah, it was a huge leap of faith. I lived with my parents while I was in school. I lived with my parents during COVID, which is when I started coaching at Hope. So this was really kind of the first time I was on my own. I knew nobody out here in Iowa. I moved out here and got here July 31st of 2022. My boyfriend drove out with me. I drove him to the airport August 1st, my first official day, dropped him off. And then I hadn't made any friends that first week. And that first Friday, the 5th, was my birthday. And so I was just like sitting here by myself on my birthday. And I was like, okay, well, kids get here next week. Like, so it was just kind of getting down to business. But it's been like the best change. I've loved it.
What was that transition like, going from being assistant coach to head coach and now building a program?
For the cross side, it was really exciting. I came in and there were only 5 athletes. So that was kind of a struggle, but it wasn't anything I wasn't used to. Hope always had a really small team, and we were able to build that team up. And I got here, both of my men were seniors. One was a 5th year, one was a senior. So I was like, okay, cool. I'm not going to have anybody this next year for cross unless, one of these seniors wants to come back for his 5th year. And then on the women's side, I had 2 seniors. I had 1 sophomore. And then in my first couple of days here, I called one of the recruits I was working on at Hope, and she couldn't go because of the cost. And I called her and I'm like, I just got a new job. I'm in Iowa. Do you want to come out here? And she's like, yeah. So she came out here on my first week, probably set the bar a little too high for myself, because then they were like, you can do this every year. And I'm like, no, I don't think I can. But so then I had 4 girls, and then we made it work with sprinters and stuff to be able to score. But yeah, I mean, it was cool to kind of be in charge of my own program. It wasn't the first time. I had done it at the high school level, but never at the collegiate level. So I think the biggest challenge was trying to figure out, like, where were we going to go run meets, because I had no idea what we were doing, where we were at. Came up with a schedule without knowing what any of these meets were or where they were. I was like, oh, this meet's in Iowa, like, it'll be fine. And then conference was at Dickinson, in Dickinson, North Dakota. So that was a 9.5-hour charter ride.
As a head coach and a new head coach, what was that like, building that schedule and that conference schedule?
It was fun. Again, I didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't know what any of these meets were like. So I really leaned on the previous years. I went back, I looked at meets they had attended in the past. I looked at results. Where did it look like they had some really good success? And then I had the opportunity to talk to each kid. I got all their numbers right when I got hired. I think I accepted the job July 17th. So it was a little later than I was ready for. So I had about 2 weeks to pack up my life and move across the country. But like, that's all part of the adventure, right? And I had asked some of the kids, like, hey, what are some meets you like absolutely don't want to go back to? What are some of the ones that you really like? And I very quickly learned that, like 2 hours to go to a meet is not very far. So, a little bit of a culture shock there and getting used to it, but it was a lot of fun, that I was really glad that first group bought in more than I thought they were going to. There was a quicker buy-in with this group than there was at the high school level, and I attribute a lot of that to their maturity and their age.
What does a typical track meet look like for you as a head coach versus for your athletes?
So track's a little different. And kind of stepping into that head role, like as director for track. It's nice. I don't think the circumstances were nice. I'm in this role because my boss who had hired me, Joel, he passed away like really suddenly and unexpectedly. And so that first season was rough. It was really just being in fight or flight mode for a lot of it. I had never been a head track coach at the high school level or the college level. Again, track for Hope looked a lot different than track for Waldorf. We were working with about 10 students in just distance. Maybe we had a sprinter or two or a jumper. And then to have every single event. So I'm really thankful that we had our throws coach, between him and myself, and he was part-time at the time. Like between the two of us, we really figured it out. We had a jumps coach. She was local to the area. She came in and worked with our students a couple days a week. But that first meet was rough. All of the emotions were high because he had passed right after indoor season. And so that first outdoor meet, the emotions were high. We saw a lot of really, really great times. One of our hurdlers qualified for nationals. And I call it like an odd or God moment. It's one of those moments that it's too coincidental to not be God. And when he ran his prelims for the 110s, it wasn't win legal. And for the NAIA, you just have to have less than 4.0 wind, or it has to be 4.0 or less. And it was over. It was like 4.1. And I think some of the gusts were getting up to 4.5. It was pretty bad. And then when he ran the finals, it was completely wind legal. He qualified. Like it was really emotional and it was really special. But for me, it's really just trying to keep the athletes positive, keep them confident, make sure they're aware of like, hey, where are we at in the meet schedule? What time are you supposed to warm up? Is the meet going to be on a rolling schedule? Is it on a fixed schedule? If it's on a fixed schedule, how many minutes are they willing to go ahead? So making sure that we communicate all of that information to the athletes. And then on their end, like I kind of tell them like, this is the general warm up. I need you to modify it how you need to for your body, whatever makes you feel best, whatever makes you feel most confident and comfortable and warmed up. And I kind of let them do their own warm up. The girls like to pray before they race, so I'll come down and I'll pray with them before they get on the line. And we kind of just watch them run fast.
As a head coach at Waldorf, what has it been like having those disciplines like the throwing and the jumping that you didn't have at Hope International?
It's been fun. There's like always something to do and it doesn't feel like there's downtime, which I guess is kind of a double-edged sword. At Hope, there was a lot of downtime. And so we'd get to have like these little conversations with students in between events. But here, like there's always something going on, which brings a different level of excitement. I get to celebrate PRs with our students as they're happening. I get to see the team like rally around one another, which is so special. Like we had one senior Kat, she was awesome. She she wouldn't yell at all these students, but if everybody was hanging out at camp and we knew one of our throwers was throwing, because usually that's going to be one of the first events to go up, she would round everybody up and she would walk everybody up to the throws, and she was everybody's biggest cheerleader, and she was just such a great athlete to have on the team. And that was just kind of the culture that was here at Waldorf before I even got here, and we're hoping to continue, is that everybody's cheering for everybody. Now, if the throws are taking an hour and you're going to race right after the throws, I don't want you missing warm up, and I don't want you standing there forever. Like, go ahead and take a seat, watch, be comfortable, but don't tax your legs. But it's so cool to see all of the disciplines mingle within each other and cheer for one another. And it's a whole team when we get to meet. So it's really special.
Who are some of the teams in your conference that you compete against?
So we're in between conferences right now. So last year we were in the North Star. So it was Bellevue, us, Valley City, Dickinson, Dakota State, and Viterbo. And it was really cool because being in that smaller conference, you really got to know each coach. And I'm going to still keep in touch with them. We're obviously going to see them at convention and stuff. Our sprint coach this last year was from Dickinson, so we had a really great working relationship with Dickinson, even though they were the furthest from us. But it was really cool because the coaches support one another. All of them reached out to me after Coach Pop's passing, and they checked and see if we needed anything. And I'm sure you get that in every conference, but it was just really meaningful to kind of see that. And then now we're transitioning to the GPAC. I don't know all of the schools, unfortunately, not off the top of my head, and I don't have them written down. I should have written them down. But that's the Great Plains Athletic Conference. It's a highly competitive conference, especially for track, but it's kind of amongst all sports. So it'll definitely be a learning curve. I can't remember if it was this year. I know it was last year for sure. Dort's men were the NAI cross country national champions, so we're running against teams that are consistently placing top 3 at nationals. So it's going to be great competition. I just need to make sure that our students are up to par and they dial in and we're ready to compete.
Can you talk about, of course, the culture as a head coach that you've built for the track program?
Yeah. So, we're really just trying to build a culture where people take accountability and they are independent. And so through doing that, our priority freshman year, we want you guys to have fun. We want you guys to enjoy the program. Sophomore year, we start to add a little bit more responsibility. Junior year, we kind of dial in. We know what events you're going to be successful in. We're really pushing for results. And then senior year is pretty self-sufficient. If there was ever a time that one of the coaches are late or can't make it to practice, we kind of expect them to get things started. They are the ones helping facilitate team bonding outside of the coach's realm. They're the ones that help mitigate little skirmishes between athletes. We've got athletes from all over the nation. And so when there's little bickering and stuff, we want the seniors to kind of go in, mediate. If it's a higher, bigger issue, definitely bring it to us. But we really just want to build a really, really competitive but caring culture where the students understand they as a human are our top priority. We care about them, then we care about their academics, and then we want to go out there and we want to compete really well and win stuff. So
what does that recruitment process look like for those prospective student athletes? And as a head coach, what do you look at in those prospective student athletes?
Yeah. So typical recruitment process, it's going to start with me emailing. I like to send out little bits of information on a pretty regular basis. And so sometimes the students miss the first few emails, but then when they see the email pop up quite a few times, then they'll go back and read some of the other emails. And then, we'll get in touch, we'll get each other's number. I try to text them, set up an initial phone call. And that initial phone call, I'm just learning about them. What do you want to major in? What are you looking for to school? For a lot of the kids, are you willing to go far from home? And that weeds a lot of kids out. I think a lot of kids don't want to go far from home, which is totally fine. I was dead set I wanted to go far from home, and then I ended up at home. So we really just try to make sure that the students understand my priority is that I want to see more students running in college. I want to keep the sport alive. I want to keep the sport filled with athletes, filled with competition. And so I want to make sure that if you're going to come to Waldorf, you're going to be here for 4 years. You know, you're bought in, you trust the vision, you're excited about the team. And once we figure out like, okay, we check a lot of these boxes and we offer your major, then we stay in touch. I try to get in contact with the parents. We'll try to do a Zoom or two. We'll go through the application. Once they get their application, we send an offer. We try to get them on campus or on a virtual tour. And then it's just staying in touch until they're ready to make that decision.
As a head coach, what is it like seeing those freshmen put on that track and uniform for the first time and your seniors put on that Waldorf uniform for the last time?
Yeah, so I don't think we've gotten there yet. But I can already imagine, like, so one of my athletes, the one that came in my like first 4 days, that was Brandy Peck. And it's gonna be such a sweet moment because she was so excited. It was so new to her. And already I've seen her grow so much in her 2 years. When she would get nervous, she would get really talkative. And so she's like this blonde, blue-eyed California girl, and she's got a bunch of like Midwest teammates, and they've never encountered someone like her. So they would kind of poke fun at her, and they were like, "You talk so much." Da, 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 da. And I'm like, "Leave her alone." And so to see how her confidence has already grown in 2 years, and to watch how it's going to continue to grow, and then I think it's going to probably be pretty emotional that senior year, watching her put it on the last time. I know for our seniors that graduated this year, it was really, really emotional, doubled with the fact that our sprints coach, he accepted a position elsewhere, but he's no longer coaching. So like this was it for him. And like I knew that, and I had to keep that internalized because we didn't want to tell the students until after their race. And when he made that announcement, like the whole bus was in tears. I was trying not to tear up because I'm like, I have to just like, if I start crying, it's not going to stop. And one of my other girls looked at me. She's like, "You're not even crying, you monster." And I'm like, I can't, because if I stop, it's not going to stop. Or if I start, it's not going to stop. So to see like that level of emotion from our seniors this year, again, I feel like every year's kind of been different. I think a lot of our students just wanted last year to be done. And I don't disagree. I just wanted last year to be done. This year, it was bittersweet. You know, I'm so grateful that we had the privilege to work with Coach George Adams. He was a great sprints coach. He really was the polar opposite of Coach Joel Poppinfoos, and I think that's what our students needed. And so right now we're in the hiring process, and you know, I think this coach is going to be completely different than the last two that we've had. And I think that's going to be really exciting. But yeah, to get back to the question, watching seniors put those uniforms on for the last time, it kind of reminds me of how I felt kind of in that last season, especially undergrad. It was such a bittersweet moment. I never considered running in grad school. And then grad school, I actually pulled my hamstring to the point where it started to tear a bit in a workout. So I didn't know that my last race was going to be my last race. So I think that was probably the best for me.
As a coach, what is it like seeing those athletes achieve those big milestones in their track and field career?
It's so much more exciting than anything I accomplished. To see an athlete's confidence build. So that first year, I was working with an athlete, Mindy, and Mindy broke 6 minutes in the mile indoors, and she was just ecstatic about it. Like she didn't think she could do it. That was a huge moment for me. Watching some of our athletes qualify for nationals, you know, Wade hitting his huge PR indoor shot at nationals. He came in ranked, I think, 10th. He had gone to nationals the previous 2 years, so this was his third round at indoor nationals. The last year he had gotten 9th, so he missed All-American by 1 spot. And I was sitting at the back barrier because, you know, they have the little coaches box for the throws coaches. I'm not going to try to go sit in there. I'm not going to be able to tell them anything, so our throws coach is in there. And Wade had already had a really big day with the weight throw. He came in, maybe it was the weight throw. It was weight throw or shot. One of them, he was ranked 12th. I think it was weight throw. And he came in and he finished third. So we were kind of riding that high. And he was confident. I was losing my mind because we had a tungsten shot, and our throws coach, Trevor Gorwin, our tungsten shot busted open. He's like, just buy me the shell and I'll fix it. So we bought him a shell. He fixed it. It weighed in. He won conference, like weighed one conference with this shell. It saved us $600. And then we get to nationals, and it's underweight because the paint in the shell had started to wear off. So then I was stressing about that, but I wasn't going to show Wade that I was stressing because I was like, dang it, like he's going to have to use this other shot. So then he goes out there, and we knew that I'm blanking on his name, but Marion, their athlete, was set to be national champion. Well, their athlete fouled the first two, and Wade was at the bottom of the heat, and then he was at the top of the heat, and the Marion guy was at the bottom because they'll go worst to best. So Wade threw, it was a decent throw for his first one, then Marion fouled. Then it goes back up to Wade. Wade popped off a huge PR. It had to have been like a meter PR. I'm crying. I'm so excited. And then the Marion guy fouls. And then it goes back to Wade, and Wade hits another PR, and I'm just shaking. And I'm like, I don't want this kid to foul out. Like, I don't want this kid's career to end that way. But if he could just like throw a little less than Wade, like that would be spectacular. And then the Marion guy popped one off and beat Wade. Wade ended up finishing second. So like those are the special moments that mean a lot to me, because I don't think Wade ever thought that he would finish second at nationals. Watching Jorge, our hurdler, qualify, that was always super exciting. This last year, he qualified in the finals at conference. It was the last possible race, so that was exciting. And then watching like Kamarley be an All-American in the 400 hurdles, even though he hit a million hurdles, he's just such a talented athlete that he could just go out there and athlete it. And then our men's 4x4 in indoor, like all of these are just such special moments, and not even just at the national level. It's like the little wins. We celebrate the little wins as much as we celebrate the big like national appearances.
What are some of your future plans for the program moving forward?
Yeah, so we really want to continue to build. Waldorf hasn't had a whole lot of consistency in coaching. It seems like most head coaches stick around for about 2.5 years. I know we've had one cross coach who stuck around for 3, and then they're kind of out. And so I think that's made it tough trying to really rebuild. I think the program was at its biggest prior to COVID. So right now we're really just trying to rebuild our program. We are trying to bring in the right athletes who want to compete out here in Iowa and like travel throughout the Midwest for meets. And we want to be competitive. So we're really looking for those right students that, want that small school, want that family feeling team, and want to live somewhere that has, a little bit less distraction, so they can just focus on their school and their sport. And so I think we're heading in the right direction. We're really excited about this freshman class that we're bringing in, and our few transfers. So I'm just excited to keep building upon it.
What advice would you have those incoming freshmen entering their first year of college track and field?
I'd say just enjoy the process. Learn everything. Ask your seniors as many questions as you possibly can. I know a lot of our freshmen would kind of make fun of some of our seniors. They're like, you're so boring, you go to school or you go to bed so early and things like that. And I would just encourage them to kind of look at it through another lens. These seniors have been tried and true through the college system. If they're going to bed early, it's probably for a reason, and you should probably take a little bit of that into account. You guys should probably follow that model. But really, I think as a freshman in any program that you're at, just learn the ropes, ask questions. Don't be afraid to communicate with your coach. You'll never be a bother. Always communicate with them. Don't make a mountain out of a mound, or out of an anthill. if someone emails you, email them back, especially if it's a professor or someone within your university. Just communicate. That's the biggest thing, and that's the biggest struggle that I see with freshmen, is that they're afraid to communicate.
What advice would you give those athletes looking to go compete at the next level representing Team USA or Canada?
Yeah, so I haven't had any of my athletes at that point yet. But I would assume it's the same as being successful in any capacity. You know, you have to focus on the little things. If you have a goal, you have to make sure that your entire life kind of aligns with that goal and helps support that goal. And so I think prioritizing the little things, your recovery, your injury prevention, your sleep, your like making sure that you're hitting enough protein and carbs, you know, lighter doesn't necessarily mean faster, having to keep that in mind. And then just trusting your training, find a coach that you really trust, get trained by them, trust that they know what they're doing, you know, trust that they have your best interest in mind. And remember that progress isn't linear. You might have a couple setbacks, but if you continue to push forward and you persevere, you're going to get there.
What advice would you give those athletes looking to get started in coaching on the college level after their playing career?
I definitely think you should go the grad assistant route. I kind of wish I would have done that. And it's not to say that I regret my decision whatsoever. You know, it's led me to where I am. I would say shoot for a grad assistant position in a different division. You know, if you're Division I, awesome. Try recruiting at the NAIA level or at the D3 level. I think it's going to make you a better recruiter. Because, you know, Division I versus 2 versus 3 versus NAIA, they're also different in regards to like recruiting and training. You know, you're going to get a lot more diamonds in the rough. You're going to get a lot more kids that are undertrained at the D3 or the NAIA level or even the junior college level. And there's so many of these like talented kids that are just hidden behind a lack of training. And you're going to find that through conversation, you know. I definitely think after college, if you think this is something you want to do grad school. It's a great way to have your master's paid for. You still get to be involved in the sport. The GA is like the fun coach that everybody loves to be around. And just respect your head coach, stay loyal to them. You know, it's going to seem like they're giving you a lot of grunt work when they're telling you like, hey, load the bus or do this or do that. And it's going to seem like a lot of busy work, but every coach at any point has gone through and kind of done their time. And, you know, good coaches are going to help you out with that as well. And you don't understand, like, it sounds so cheesy, but what drove me insane was having to figure out where we were going to eat. And so I passed that off to my grad assistant last year. I was like, Chase, I just need you to figure out where we're going to eat each meal. That is your sole responsibility. That's it. And he would like send me a list. He's like, Coach, these are the 6 options. And I was like, Chase, this is a godsend. Thank you so much. You are doing so much for my mental health. You're doing so much for my sanity. And so just like little things like that, because all I would do is ask him to pick where we're eating, but he went above and beyond, you know? And you could tell like he is so bought in. And I could go on and on about how great Chase has been for the program and what it's been like getting to coach him versus getting to work with him. But we're just really excited to get to retain him on staff. But yeah, like start with the grad assistant position, move into an assistant coach position. Part of me wishes that I got to be an assistant coach for a little bit longer to get to, you know, learn from Coach Poppinfoos, or get to work under another really experienced coach. But, you know, trial by fire, I'm figuring it out. This last year was a little rocky. I definitely feel like I've got my feet under me and I know so much more now going through what we went through. So your time to be a head coach will come. Remember, when you're the head coach, you got to be the bad guy. And as long as you're the assistant or the grad assistant, you get to be the fun coach.
What advice would you give those head coaches looking to get started in coaching in college track and field?
Like from high school to college?
Or assistant coaches to head coaches?
You think that you always think that you're ready for it and you're not quite. It's so much more paperwork and just like little things that I could have never anticipated. So give yourself grace. find some really good mentors to lean back on and talk to. Find someone that you really, really respect and try to schedule phone calls with them. I talk to other head coaches all the time. I'm not afraid to admit to my athletes when I've messed up. I think that's a big thing. Like, you're not above anybody. I will go in and do the dirty work with all of my assistants. I never ask them to just do something while I sit in my office. And I think most good head coaches are going to do that. But just give yourself grace. I think that's the biggest lesson I've learned. I was very hard on myself this last year. But I have to remind myself, like, this is the first time I've ever done it. I'm very thankful to have worked under Coach Whittington and Coach Pop. But I only got to work under Coach Pop for the single indoor season in the fall. And then I only got to work under Coach Whittington in the capacity of like our distance squad. So it was essentially like being a cross coach all year. So I really had no idea what a college full-blown track program was supposed to look like. So make connections, ask a lot of questions, and then also like lean on your athletic director and the other support staff that your athletic department offers.
That's great advice. Where can my listeners find you on social media along with the program?
Yeah, so I don't remember what my coaching page is. I'm gonna look it up real quick. But I do have a coaching Instagram, and that's where I try to do some of my recruiting. I don't post as often as I should, but that would be Coach.Langrell, and it's just my last name. And then we have an Instagram page for our team, and that's Waldorf Warriors XCTF.
Thank you again, Coach Janna Langrell, for your interview, and best of luck in your future at Waldorf as the head track coach.
Thank you. Have a great one.
Thank you. You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon. You can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Coach Janna, for your interview, and best of luck in your future.
Thank you.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.